This is part 2. The example I want to use today is the Electoral College because it is under threat, and there is a reason for its existence that many in the media insist makes no sense. Even Washington insists it makes no sense and they want to do away with it. But they have to pass an amendment to do so because it's in the Constitution, thank God. But it has a purpose, and the reason few today realize it is because a change was added to the Constitution through an amendment, and this led to schools not teaching this reason anymore. The change, in fact, has 2 amendments, but the first one is the one I want to talk about in this one. It's the first one that did the real damage. That amendment is the 17th Amendment. The argument was this is a democracy, and before this amendment was put into the Constitution, the senators had been picked by the legislatures of each state. If a vacancy would take place while the legislature is out, then the governor can appoint one until they get back in session, who would then have to be approved. This was for 6 years, and it was staggered so that every 2 years, a third of the senators will face re-election. Now, this is under Article 1, Section 3. And that used to be how it worked. Because governors and elected leaders in the states were considered less likely to act emotionally. We can't say the same today. So, anyway, it was felt that this made sense. Why should a governor and state senators pick people that had so much power over citizens? However, it also caused us to lose why the Electoral College existed. Article 2, Section 2, and you might look at Section 3. I think it applies, but Section 2 really just talks about it. This is a part I want you to be advised on. This is my interpretation based upon human behavior, which I call wisdom. It takes human behavior and history into account. So just be advised, this part is not actually listed in the Constitution. I don't know if it's in the Federalist Papers or not. So, the Electoral College exists because, in my opinion, and I can at least articulate a purpose for the Electoral College, something that the educated class fail to infer since it is not documented, but based on wisdom. As I said, I don't think they're that stupid. They fully understand, but choose to pretend it makes no sense. Because they want to remove it. It is, after all, a pain and slows federal government's ability to make fast changes. There is 3 groups dealt with in the Constitution, not 2. You have the federal, that is to be kept tightly constrained by the Constitution, and citizens, that is represented by the House of Representatives, and always directly voted on by the citizens. It also had control of the purse strings, likely because it was felt the citizens hopefully would not want to waste their money, while the Senate and federal government would not always see the citizens' money as something that was limited and should be used wisely, because they are representing governments, the state government and the federal government. It was the third group. The Electoral College is there for. The states, it is a check, meant to act in a way like a union. We see unions today, they represent the citizens, but they get to collectively bargain, and that collectivity allows for pressure to be put on the big guy, the people, the employers. That's basically what the states was originally supposed to do. So, it's a check meant to act in a way like a union is thought to work in theory. How many are taught today that the senators do not represent the citizens, but the states? Today I mention this, and people fail to get the difference. After all, the state is the citizen of that state. But it's not. The state has its own interest that needed representation. The Senate has 2 senators from each state. Every one of the 50 states has an equal number because they are equal in the eyes of the federal government. That leaves us with 100 senators. The Electoral College has those 100 represented, and that's where the discrepancy comes into play. There's 435 that represent the House members, and there's 100 that represent the state, which is the Senate. The Electoral College is there to protect the tyranny of the majority that was represented by the King of England at the time. We rebelled against them, while they recognized a democracy was unlikely to work. You had 13 states with their own identities, their own concerns. For them to cede power to the federal government, they needed to understand they each had an equal voice. At the federal level, the Electoral College allows for each state to have a guarantee of 3 votes. You can't have less than that in the Electoral College. With the change of the 17th Amendment, the states' rights was obscured. We still have the states, and they do have power, but citizens are not taught that on the federal level there are 3 groups that are to work as one through compromise.